Hey guys, Thomas the Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review the movie Fighting with My Family, based on a true story on the WWE superstar Paige. And before I do begin my review, I will say that just a fun little tidbit about me is that I used to watch WWE. I used to be what you would probably call a casual fan of WWE entertainment. So it was pretty interesting to see a documentary come to light in a more comedic-ish type of semi-documentary. This other person playing a younger Paige. I'm sorry if I'm not familiar with this actress particularly. I don't usually get enough time to look up names. Regardless, for purposes, I will just refer to her as Paige throughout the review to make it simple. So, this WWE backstory starts off with, as you see on the poster, you see a little bit of The Rock's classical reel from early WWE history, followed up by a brother and a sister, who you also see on the poster on the far right on the poster there, to watch. So, after their little bickering, I suppose I'll call it, the mother and father come in, also really enjoying wrestling, and then we cut, essentially, to what I would assume was Paige's, first attempt in a match against this other, against his brother, her brother, in a, this, of course, it's a scripted match, so, and then cutting to her later on in a match with another female competitor. So they show a little montage of the brother and the sister doing all these little practice matches and so on and so forth, and then messing around with each other, being what a family is, or their family anyway. So they send one of their various videos to, of course, the WWE. And we see that the streets of this area are filled with potential crime, and we even know that the father was a former criminal, as we learn later on. And we see that the brother essentially gets all these people in for this, van, and he essentially gets them all riled up to learn how to wrestle as well. So we cut to some training, and we go to the back with the father, who is getting one of his friends to set up a match where he was using various weapons to see if he would be up to using said weapons, and it's more for comic relief of that moment. Again, we talk about very briefly how the father talks about how he used to be a thief, and we see that the brother actually has a girlfriend at the time named Courtney, and so they meet her family. And when they meet her family, they do the whole oh, what is this whole wrestling thing? And then they say oh, is it fake? And then they say, I think the quote was, "It's not fake, it's fixed," which I think is a nice spin on it. I don't think I've heard it WWE as fixed before. I've heard the term scripted, but not fixed, so it's a different, interesting word that I have not come across in my time watching the WWE. But we did the WWE indeed. So we are shown more old school stuff. And we cut to the brother and the sister running and then getting ready for this preparation. So the two of them get to essentially live arena, and they bump into a more current version of The Rock. And they talk with him, and they're trying to get some advice about essentially how to go on with the approach. And The Rock does the bit that he is known for very famously. You know what The Rock is cooking. You know he builds up that energy. And if you don't, you could probably. Oh, there we go. Sorry, everything froze for a second there. I was a little worried. Anyway, getting back to the review. So we see the trainer character played by Vince Vaughn, which I think is very apt. The immediate movie, after seeing his little bits, was very reminiscent of the movie Dodgeball, is the immediate movie I thought of like train, do the name calling, sort of yada yada yada. So when she is in training, this is about the time when she took on the name Paige. That was not, of course, her real name, but that is when she took on that particular name. So it is up to, there are various other like little practices matches that happen, and then Paige and her brother are doing their part, and the brother like whispers to the sister to essentially go all out, and they do. So when it's time to reveal who is going to be picked, Paige is actually the only one. There was like at least 10 potential wrestlers there, and they only had picked her. So Paige goes after, feeling that upset, saying like, oh, you need to essentially pick my brother. He did just as well, you know, he did the good job at the wrestling. But he says, Vince Vaughn's character says that he essentially does not have the spark. And then the brother stays behind. And to me, I felt like, again, gonna get a little bit of a personal story, if you don't mind. This felt very akin to a lot of experiences that I have had throughout my life. You know, me growing up trying to be a writer, being told various times that I was never going to achieve being a writer, being told I can't be a writer. I've been told all of these various things, and now it has turned out to be very much true. I published that book and it didn't do anything. It didn't go anywhere. It didn't succeed. I failed. And, you know, the brother later on rages on, trying so desperately to just hang on, just to get that one chance, and that is something I fight so admirably here especially on YouTube. That is something if I saw this guy, you know, if his particular desire was to be a YouTuber, and if he was a new YouTuber, I would have said, hey, I'm going to give this guy a shout out. I'm going to do everything within my power to make sure people, at least somebody, is giving this goddamn guy a chance. If he's giving that much energy, that much passion, so, you know, just drive to do this thing, I would be going out of my way, absolutely, to say this guy deserves a shot. And, you know, again, being told that big no, you can't do this thing. Again, that felt like it re-hit me when I started deep into YouTube. When I hit that 100 subscribers here on YouTube, I finally thought I had achieved it. I could monetize my videos. I was a real YouTuber. And on that very day, I was told, no, you are not a real YouTuber. You need to make 1,000 subscribers. That is what YouTube said to me on that day. They said, no, your dream is... And that drives me so mad. And to see that embridled rage just, it is... It's definitely a very emotional thing for me to see on screen, because this is everything and it just to see it on screen in that way definitely hits home. So rant aside, so yes, the brother does get left behind. So, the parents say their goodbyes to Paige. She is brought to what is called the NXT. For those of you who don't know, NXT was essentially the sort of training into getting into the WWE. It became more of a regular programmed show, but when NXT first started, it was more of a sort of like off, doing their own thing, training these stars to become potential WWE recruits, or either on Raw or SmackDown. So we cut to the montage happening, and we see that as she's doing her training, the brother again is kind of slowly but surely losing his cool, as it were. He's still trying and trying and trying, and again, that connection, I definitely felt personal to that. We see Paige pushing weights, which cut directly to the brother's girlfriend, who I forgot when this happens. I didn't write it in my notes, I do apologize, but he proposed to her at some point earlier in the movie. I think that happens when the families met up, I think. And now she's pregnant, and she's giving birth. And then it cuts to Paige attempting to give a promo, and she gives one of the classic ones that she can remember, and then Vince Vaughn's like, you gotta do better than that. So we cut to, again, the brother being desperate, just taking in what he can get. He gets in this match where he gets pinned down to these needles, and then he has to go in the hospital. So he's trying to convince the coach that he has found that said spark, but the coach still says no at that point. So we cut back to Paige and one of the I'm sorry I didn't write their particular names. I know there are other WWE divas that ended up in the roster at some point, because I do remember hearing those names in particular, but I just didn't catch their names in my notes, so I didn't actually remember off the top of my head. So one of the female wrestlers that are wrestling Paige hits her, and that's something you're trying not to do, obviously. You're trying to make it look like it as closely as possible, and apparently Paige, after the second time that it happened, hit her back, which is apparently called a receipt. I did not know this term before, but apparently it's some sort of oh, you messed up, so I'm allowed to get that one off on you. But the coach is having none of that and makes her apologize, that being Paige. So we see that the NXT females are being led in. We cut to this, and they're essentially trying to mock up for their audience, trying to figure out which ones are doing their thing. So the two have this setup where one of them is mocking Paige, and Paige doesn't know how to respond when she is lent the mic, and when she's off on her own, she ends up crying, being very emotional about not being able to step up to that particular moment. So we cut back to the brother, who is on the brink of just giving up on everything, and then, because the baby's just there crying, and then the girlfriend or wife, I guess they're potentially about to be married, I forget, but she has to pick up the baby. So she's trying to call the brother. The brother's name is Zach, by the way, if you are not aware. Sorry, I did not mention that earlier, but nonetheless. So he was still doing that, keeps freezing on me, the van that he used to pick up the other kids in. So she sort of leaves them behind. So Paige looks at herself after and decides that she's gonna go out and try to get a new look. She dyes her hair or gets a wig or something along those lines. I think she dyed her hair. And she also gives herself a tan to look, because her skin is very pale, to essentially fit in with the other ladies as they go to the train at the beach. And Paige is the one falling the furthest behind out of all the others. And before, as they are traveling to get to this little training section, or afterwards, I think it's after they're heading back, I should say, Paige looks at the other women talking with each other, and she just assumes that they're talking about her. She approaches them, she gives them guff, and it turns out that one of them had a daughter, and that is it. So, she sort of storms off on her own where they go for a little rest. And Paige is still trying to figure out why the coach is like, the brother didn't have it. And he kind of regaled his own story and sort of placed it on him, and I think that's a kind of unfortunate thing. But he also family man, and as that new particular family man, he wouldn't be able to support that baby because, if you know anything about WWE superstars travel all the time. So that is a part of WWE culture. So I think that is a little bit heavy. I don't know, it's really tough to say. Like, every circumstance is going to be different, obviously. So she does end up returning to her family and meeting with her brother, and he's not having any of it. I don't know. I don't know what I feel. I feel like I'm not gonna get there. And then during one of their promo matches, because they were setting up for this now that she was Paige, during the match, the brother actually gets really aggressive, doing actual connecting with all the moves that he was doing, and she was gonna quit, and then she gets mad that he did that for her. So the mother follows her for this solo talk, and then after their little moment, they proceed to go back to get Zach, who's now so mad and upset about everything that he's getting into these bar fights, or a bar fight. He's pulled away as this is progressing, and Paige is now following him alone, trying to understand why he's raging out. And he goes off on her saying that this is my dream too, and you said that you also had that very same dream, but you are now saying that you don't want this dream, and that is why I'm being this tough, because you're giving up on something that I also wanted. So after she's able to come back and have a heartfelt talk with her father, and this sort of he says to her that she is their family spark. So she holds up that title, or one of those practice titles that you can buy, and when she arrives back to the NXT arena, she essentially comes back with the black hair and her pale skin, and she essentially said, since she didn't back down, or technically wasn't kicked out, that she was going to remain there. And the manager, or the coach guy, said, "Yeah, okay." So we get another training montage, and she starts to connect with the other divas there, and they're able to help her out earlier on as well, so they are able to push each other to make it together. So there is definitely a connection with these four particular. There is definitely four of them, including Paige herself, that had suddenly gotten this tight knit. So we then cut to the NXT, and while that is going on, we also are seeing the brother propping up to watch on now at this point, and go back to sort of what he was doing before. So we are seeing now that WrestleMania is coming about, and for those who may not be in the know, which, you know, if you know nothing about the WWE, WrestleMania is pretty much the main event. It is a culmination of all of the things that all these wrestling matches are building up to. It is their biggest pay-per-view. So, it is that coming around, and all the NXT divas are there. So she, in particular, gets to meet up with a cameo. Well, I guess it's technically not a cameo, since Sheamus and Big Show were also part of the WWE roster. I'm not sure if they still were, or I should say still are. I don't know if they still wrestle. I don't know, actually. But anyways, some of the other divas also see The Miz walking through. So definitely a few WWE stars coming to a WWE film. So again, I'm not sure if that's technically a cameo. I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, so Paige is moved on ahead with the coach, and she thinks she's in trouble, and she meets up with The Rock. And the two of them call the parents, and the father hangs up at her on The Rock at the first call. But The Rock does inform her and them as well at the same time that she will be facing the WWE's Divas Champion at the time. I believe it was AJ Lee, for the title match, and that she will potentially win over that match. Well, I don't think he specifically told them that she would win, but rather that she would be in the match, and told her that she was going to win. So we cut back to the brother actually meeting the other brother, one of the ones we learned earlier. I forgot where this took place in my notes. I've completely overglanced it, but one of the brothers was arrested, and we see him getting out, so we see those two brothers talking, and this conversation is what allows the brother that we have been following to get back into it, to help the kids that were training in the WWE, or not WWE van, but their van of wrestlers there. He was also particularly training also a blind wrestler that wanted to do it as well, and in the end they do make mention that they actually helped that particular person become like a actual, like, I guess he had like an actual match or something, I don't know, which is cool. So that's cool. So yeah, anyways, we cut back to Paige, and then we cut to the match like ending or something, like John Cena comes out or whatever, and then we cut back to Paige like waiting out. She has her match next, and she's starting to freak out. She's starting to have that confidence issue all over again, and she gets a call from her brother. The brother ensures that confidence, which she is able to come out. She gets in the ring with AJ Lee, and I will say it's pretty obvious from this ending here that they clearly made a very prompted, different match, at least the lead up to that match between Paige and AJ Lee, because after I saw this movie, I decided to check out Paige's debut in WWE. AJ Lee had like this other, I forget her name, she was this taller woman though, with her at the moment. She is not there in this little promo that AJ is cutting. AJ was giving Paige a lot of like, you like came to thank me or whatever, but I don't need it. Like there was a lot of that going on in the actual event, and in this interpretation, or this change rather, AJ Lee starts like giving her a little grief and then waits like a moment for a response. See that she isn't getting a response after she gets Paige doesn't respond. She's starting getting booed by the crowd. So AJ sees that she's like, looks around really briefly, seeing that this isn't going well, and decides that she's going to interrupt, and she says she's going to put her title in the line, which she does do that in the actual match. She does put her title on the line, obviously, and then starts attacking Paige. At some point of her match, she does her iconic scream. You probably won't know what that means unless you watch WWE. And like AJ Lee is about to do her like finishing submission move, but then Paige does like her main move, which I guess is just like a pretty basic drop out of that holds that AJ had on her, which does happen in the actual match itself at the end there. And then Paige gets the count. She gets the 1, 2, 3, and then she gets the win. And the people, of course, cheer for her. And then, as she leaves, she celebrates with her little friends. And then it shows, like, the cameraman, like, getting up with her and stuff and all that. And then after it cuts out to black, it tells us what the rest of the WWE superstars went on to do. For those of you who don't know, Paige had already retired by this point, and there was the stuff behind that. I'm not sure if that's why they decided to do her backstory. They also said like her backstory was interesting, like something people could connect with as well, which I definitely agree with that aspect. Yeah, it tells like what The Rock is doing. He's featuring in movies, which is ironic now that he's featuring in a movie where he's playing the role as his former WWE self. So, again, definitely some weird stuff going on in this movie, but definitely a movie I really enjoyed, and again, I'm really late to this review, but again, I definitely really enjoyed this particular movie. I definitely felt for that brother character who definitely went through that struggle, but he managed to at least get on his feet, and that is something that I've not yet obtained. I'm definitely still very much a failure by design, I suppose. But you know, this is still Paige's story, and as far as Paige's story is concerned, this is still a rise up to the moment, seize that moment, push to get that moment, earn that moment, and take full control of that moment. And she needed that push from her family as well, particularly her brother, which I felt like, again, family, it's a very important thing, you know? So again, I really enjoyed this movie, and it does have that additional personal connection with me. With the comedy and with, you know, most of the things did seem accurate. Again, I did point out when there was at least one inaccuracy, but I do think that it actually kind of helps the movie, obviously. Because I'm going to be real with you, that particular little debacle between AJ Lee and Paige, at least in WWE, wasn't that great. It was kind of mediocre, if anything. So, I think they did actually a little bit better here, so good on them for taking a few liberties. I would say that one was warranted in this case. As for a score, I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm always particularly a fan of autobiography-like movies anyways. I tend to usually like them a little bit more than most movies. I guess there's might be a little bit of a bias as someone who used to watch WWE, and it's interesting how far the Divas division has come, at least from the time I started watching it and when, I started to, head off towards it. And it definitely made an interesting continuation of Stride. I don't think there's ever been a moment where it died. It just felt like there was a moment where it kind of skewered down just a bit and then came back. There was a resurgence. It didn't fully die, but there was definitely some sort of resurgence there. I don't know if it's dead again or not. I don't know. But yeah, that is my review of Fighting with the Family. And if you enjoyed this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord server. Please feel free to join, and one will send you over to my Patreon page. If you want to donate to help someone fight for their dream, then please feel free to go to that and support me there. With any donations are always greatly appreciated. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.